Over the years, numerous UFO sightings and encounters have been reported, some which remain shrouded in mystery and defy conventional explanations. In this brief exploration, we delve into 3 compelling UFO cases that have left investigators, scientists, and the curious alike questioning the boundaries of our understanding of the skies. Case 2. On August 26, 1975, in Fargo, North Dakota, Sandy Larson, her boyfriend Terry O'Leary, and Sandy's 15-year-old daughter Jackie were driving to Bismarck, North Dakota on Interstate 94, which was a distance of approximately 196 miles. It was 4 a.m. in the morning, and they were 45 miles west of Fargo when they encountered something very unusual. Initially, they saw a flash and then a rumbling sound, and from the southern sky, heading east, they saw 8 to 10 glowing orange orbs that seemed to be surrounded by smoke. The orbs were heading towards their car. One of the objects was much larger than the others, and the 3 witnesses had the impression that the other objects had come out of the larger object. The orbs came down from the sky until they sat above some trees, which were about 20 yards away from their car. All of a sudden, half of the object abruptly flew away, where for a few seconds the 3 occupants felt an odd sensation and became disoriented, and it felt like they'd been frozen or stuck. All of a sudden, they witnessed the objects suddenly leave. What was even stranger was that they'd all changed positions in the car. Her daughter Jackie, who had been sitting in the middle of the front seat between Terry and her mother, was now sitting in the middle of the back seat and had no idea how she got there. The 3 then continued their journey down Interstate 94 and stopped at the next gas station, while at the same time were attempting to collect their thoughts. Strangely though, as for her partner Terry, all conscious memory of the incident vanished immediately. When they checked their watches, they found that they'd somehow lost an hour. Sandra and her daughter were disturbed by what had happened to them, and the incident came to the attention of a psychologist from the University of Wyoming called R. Leon Sprinkle. And 3 months later, in December 1975, Sandy and her daughter Jackie decided to undergo hypnosis. Her partner Terry refused to undergo hypnosis, either through fear or was possibly in denial of the incident. The hypnotic regression took place at the University of Wyoming with R. Leon Sprinkle. Under hypnosis, Sprinkle uncovered a series of events that Sandra did not recall while conscious. Her daughter Jackie said that she remembered being outside the car in a state of paralysis and could see her mother floating in the air towards a UFO, along with her boyfriend Terry. Sandra Larson said that she recalled being levitated towards one of the objects and once inside was placed onto an operating table. She was then given a medical exam by some strange-looking beings, about 6 foot tall, that looked to be more robotic than humanoid. She said the creature had large, glaring, bulbous eyes that stared out of a head covered in wrappings and looked like a mummy. His arms looked like they were made out of strips of metal, like a Meccano set. Meccano sets were a metal toy building kit that were popular with children in the 60s and 70s. His body was covered in what she described as brown vinyl. The strange-looking being then carried out several experiments on her, where it would rub a clear liquid on her body before taking scrapings from the inside of her nose with some type of instrument which was extremely painful, and carried out other medical procedures on her. At one stage, Sandra felt as if her brain had been removed from her skull, where she was feeling dizzy and nauseous, and it felt like her head was ready to explode. While she was lying down, she looked across and saw her partner Terry, who was standing up and appears to have been clamped to the wall. In a later hypnosis session with psychologist Leo Sprinkle, Sandra recalled being visited by the same aliens earlier in her life and was levitated through a solid wall. A similar type of encounter would take place 14 years later on November 30th, 1989, when New York housewife Linda Napolitano, in the middle of the night, was abducted by aliens and made to float above the Manhattan sky until she entered a UFO. She was also levitated through solid walls, and it's also interesting to note that she too had been abducted as a child. The Sandra Larson incident, however, changed the way the scientific community examines such phenomena, taking into account psychological effects such as trauma and perception. To this day, 48 years later, there still is not a rational explanation of the events the 3 experienced, as these people are not alone, where over many years, thousands of people throughout the world are convinced that they have been abducted by aliens. There are also many people who, after being abducted, claimed that under hypnosis found that it was not the first time they'd been abducted, where many claimed that they'd been regularly abducted since childhood, as if they were part of some giant alien experiment or an alien hybrid breeding program. Case 1. Tracy and Darren Jones and their 4 children were living in Yorkshire in northern England. Tracy claims to have been psychically sensitive all her life and was able to sense things about people she has met. In 1993, the couple and their 6-year-old daughter Georgina were renting a 300-year-old cottage for 4 months. The other children had not been born at that stage. One evening, Darren could hear a strange humming noise coming from outside the cottage, and first thought it was someone mowing their lawn. Both he and Tracy went to the window, but at first could not see anything unusual. But all of a sudden their cottage was engulfed by an intense white light that had come from the sky. But as they looked up, they could not see where it was coming from, and it lasted about 15 minutes. The following morning, Darren went outside to the front of the cottage and found that the wrought iron gates had been wrenched open and were twisted. He then looked across at the stable doors that had been secured by padlocks and found that they'd been forced open. Strangely though, every time he closed the stable doors at least once a week, something or someone kept opening them. Shortly after moving into the cottage, Tracy was admitted to hospital in nearby Wakefield for a chest operation. After returning home, Tracy's chest became infected and she had to be readmitted to the hospital. Tracy was in a lot of pain and the hospital staff were concerned about her health. When she was finally allowed to return home, Tracy would receive daily visits from the district nurse, who had to change and dress her infected wound. The bandage on the wound was secured with white surgical tape, which covered all of her chest. The daily visits from the nurse would continue for 4 weeks. One morning, Tracy awoke to find the bandage on her chest was no longer there, and after thoroughly searching the bedroom and the rest of the cottage, could not locate them. Darren even moved the bed to see if the bandage could be found. What was most amazing was that Tracy could no longer feel any pain. When the nurse arrived to change the dressing, she found the wound was now clean and healthy, yet the day before the wound had leaked through the bandage and stained the bedding. How could she have suddenly healed overnight? One morning when Tracy awoke, she found she was wearing her pyjamas, but her bra and undies were missing and could not be found. One night Darren woke to see a figure standing by the window. The figure looked to be the same size and height as his wife, and the figure was looking in the box where a bandage and tapes were. Darren was still in a drowsy state and assumed it was his wife looking for painkillers. But as he turned to place his head on the pillow, he could see his wife fast asleep next to him. Now wide awake, he quickly sat up in bed and looked back towards the window, but the figure had vanished. In the short time they stayed in the house, they were plagued by strange events, such as doors opening and closing by themselves. Ornaments and furniture had moved around. They could hear voices coming from empty rooms. They assumed the cottage was haunted, as neighbours had told them that many residents who had resided there had had many problems. However, when they eventually moved out of the cottage to another old house, the weird, inexplicable events continued. It seems that it was not the cottage that was attracting strange visitors, but the family. At the new house, their electrical appliances started going crazy. Toilets would flush for no reason, and the bath would fill up by itself and then empty. On one occasion, Tracy could hear footsteps coming down the hall and walked straight past her, but she saw nothing. A local vicar was invited in to bless the house, and he told them that he sensed a malign presence in the smallest of the 3 bedrooms. They told them that they would often smell lavender in the room, and it was always cold even when the heating was turned on. There was a portable TV in the room that would turn itself on and off. The family continued to rent various houses whilst Darren was waiting to receive an overseas contract. On one occasion they were staying in a modern house and were relatively free from any paranormal activity. However, on another occasion they were renting a property on the edge of the Yorkshire moors, where the house had amazing views of the landscape from the rear of the house. On most nights they would observe bright lights sweeping across the hills in an area that many people claimed to have seen UFOs. One night they saw a UFO remain stationary for over 20 minutes, and every 30 seconds it would turn on its horizontal axis, where Darren and Tracy could see its dark underside. They contacted an RAF base who told them that someone would be in attendance. Within 24 hours, and while they were not at home, they found that the house had been burgled, where the tape, computer and printer were stolen, but other valuables and cash were not taken. One morning, Darren walked into the bathroom to take a shower, and Tracy followed a few seconds later as she needed hot water to heat the baby's bottle. When she walked into the bathroom, her husband was nowhere to be seen. She looked in the shower and could see that someone had recently been in there. She then checked around the house and then looked in the driveway and could see his car was still there. She went back upstairs and found Darren on the landing with a towel around his waist. When Tracy told him what had happened, he swore he'd never left the bathroom and he did not see her walk in. After this incident, Darren found that he was losing time, where a 5-minute drive to the garage would take half an hour, and he could not account for the lost time. By this time, they'd had a 2-year-old child called Marcus, who started having terrifying nightmares. Tracy would wake up paralysed and unable to move. On more than one occasion would see 2 tall, old, thin men with long white beards and wearing black habits who looked like monks, staring at her from the foot of the bed. All the family except baby Daniel would wake up and find strange marks and bruises on their bodies. One morning, Marcus found the imprint of 4 fingers on either side of his torso. Tracy had many fears and phobias that could not be explained. She feared that in the dark, something would reach out and touch her. She hated being alone and insisted the curtains were closed so faces could not look in. She had had this fear since she was a little girl. Darren worked for a shipping company and in 1997 was sent to Dubai, where 7 weeks later his family followed. In the 7 weeks they had spent by himself, there was no unusual activity, but the moment Tracy and the family moved in, strange things started to happen again. Marcus, now 3, was telling them about the man who lived in one of his lights in his bedroom, where he took him and his sister Georgina into the light to talk and play. One time Marcus believed he could fly and wanted to climb onto the roof. Georgina shared the bedroom with Marcus and very early one morning saw a light flickering in the hallway, followed by an unusual oval-shaped light on the wall at the bottom of her bed. In the middle of the light was a small grey figure with long arms, and it came towards her. Their dog Bibi then began to whimper. She'd forgotten about the incident until the following morning, when she showed her parents marks on both of her knees that looked like 4 fingerprints. Over the next few weeks in Dubai, Marcus became nervous and complained that the man had hurt his tummy. More unusual events followed, where electrical appliances became erratic and a mug moved across a table and smashed on the floor. Both Tracy and Georgina had somehow lost half an hour. After a few months, the family moved back to England and rented a house in Huddersfield in West Yorkshire. Marcus continued to complain about the man in the light who took him up there. Their other son Daniel was now starting to scream during the night, and marks were also found on his body. Darren, Tracy and Georgina were hearing each other's voices when nobody was around. They would hear noises and objects would appear and then disappear. Tracy was eventually hypnotised and described very tall men near her bed that looked like monks with blue eyes and white beards. She was on a white table in a room with rounded corners. She could not move, and there was a powerful white light shining down on her open chest. A mechanical object came down with a silver-coloured needle that entered a wound on her chest, followed by a burning sensation. More hypnotherapy sessions showed that the family had been abducted on numerous occasions. This is a case where the family were being both haunted and abducted, or were the incidents somehow related?